All right. So, hey everyone. My name is Melissa Spieg and I work for Kachess Conservation Trust. And today I am going to present to you for a little site visit to Kachess River. Okay, so the main issue facing Kachess River currently is dewatering. Over half of the available rearing river habitat dewaters for 2 or more months every summer, and the river lacks large wood and pools. So here's another picture where you can see some dewatering that's either already happened or is actively taking place. Kachess River supports a genetically distinct population of bull trout, which are listed as a federally threatened species. The Kachess population of bull trout is in decline, with an estimated population of less than 50 and on the cusp of blinking out. Kachess River is the only spawning ground for this population and provides critical habitat for bull trout in the egg incubation and rearing stages. The greatest threat to these populations is dewatering, which occurs annually. Approximately 1.4 miles of river, over half seasonally dewaters, which is not enough in a habitat-limited system. Rearing bull trout are killed as the river dewaters every year when they are stranded out of water. Those that end up in the groundwater-fed pools without cover are easily preyed upon by garter snakes and other predators. Dewatering can inhibit adults from being able to spawn or delay it severely with negative consequences. In 2019, the river didn't connect until very late into the fall. WDFW biologists documented 16 reds in the reservoir, which were largely unproductive. There's a tremendous amount of work going into keeping the Kachess bull trout population viable. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Yakima Nation, May-Columbia Fisheries, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started fish rescue efforts a couple of years ago, which entails moving fish from areas that are going to dewater upstream where it remains wet year-round. In addition, the Yakima Nation started a rearing program that takes a portion of the rescued fish back to a hatchery to rear over the winter and then are released back into the Kachess Reservoir in the spring. These efforts are keeping this population viable, but we need to restore Kachess River as part of the long-term solution. To persist, rearing bull trout need better habitat to thrive in. This project proposes to restore natural processes. This includes constructing large wood structures to provide habitat and establishing roughness bars to mimic floodplain and allow riparian vegetation to establish in the portion of the river that dewaters annually. In 2020, we completed a groundwater study that informed actions we can take to improve floodplain connectivity by moving more water across the floodplain. The proposed work for this project will restore natural processes, helping to decrease the extent and duration of dewatering to augment survival. So at low pool, Kachess River extends for 1.7 miles from the confluence, which is up in here, down to Little Kachess Lake. A large portion of the floodplain was clear-cut, and some thinning took place in the western side slope. So here's the clear-cut area that you can see pretty distinctively, and then there was some thinning that happened over here. The old-growth riparian forest was left near the mouth of the river, down in here. There are seasonal and perennial tributaries that flow from the eastern and western slopes, so Cedar Creek, Magic Creek, and Watermelon Creek. Magic Creek and Cedar Creek both flow year-round, although they are not connected to the river year-round. Coal Creek flows and provides year-round water even when Kachess River is dewatered. The majority of bull trout spawning takes place on the portion of Kachess River above the confluence, shown by this orange symbol. The red dot on the map indicates the extent of dewatering that we typically see on an annual basis. The proposed work areas are highlighted in the red boxes. Forest Service Road 4600 runs to the parking area of Mineral Creek Trailhead, right here, and then becomes impassable due to Watermelon Creek, a seasonal tributary, and vegetation growth. The old timber access road goes down to the river where it can continue to the riverbed. The road was never decommissioned and continues to have a negative impact on the floodplain. This project in its entirety will improve habitat on approximately 1 mile of the river between the confluence of Mineral Creek and Kachess River and Little Kachess Lake. This project can be completed in phases, working from bottom up, or completed all at once if funding capacity and timing align. This project will improve in-stream habitat by creating more pools, adding complexity, and reconnecting the floodplain and tributaries. Overall actions for the project include constructing large wood structures with associated pools to mimic the large old-growth trees that used to provide large woody habitat and hard points in the river, constructing roughness bars to mimic lost floodplain and confine the channel, excavating a high-flow channel for high-flow refugia and to convey floodwaters onto the floodplain, reconnecting tributaries to the floodplain, and relocating the trailhead and decommissioning roads negatively impacting the floodplain and river. A component of this project is to harvest wood from the areas of the floodplain that were previously clear-cut and thinned, following the prescription of a Forest Service silviculturist. Treatment of these areas will improve forest health and promote the regeneration of old-growth forests. We don't anticipate any recreational impacts for the first phase of this project, but ultimately this project will enhance the recreational experiences of users. Okay, so the project scale, funding, and work windows will likely lead this project to be completed in phases. As such, the project is sequenced for work to take place in the portions of the river that dewater each summer first. Work will begin at the bottom of the project area and reach 2 to minimize impacts to restoration work once completed. We expect the phases of the project to be Phase 1, which you can see in red. We will construct mid-channel jams, roughness bars, and bank barrier jams in Reach 2, and we'll reconnect Magic Creek to Cold Creek to enhance floodplain function. Then we'll decommission the associated access routes. Phase 2, which is in orange, we'll construct mid-channel jams, roughness bars, and bank barrier jams in Reach 3. Then we'll fill in the gully created by Forest Service Road 4600, and we'll decommission the associated access routes. In Phase 3 in yellow, we'll place large wood habitat features in Reach 4. We'll excavate the high-flow side channel, and we'll decommission associated access routes and Forest Service Road 4600 to the current trailhead parking area. Then, in Phase 4 in green, we'll establish a new trailhead and trail, and we'll decommission Road 4600 to the junction up here. So this will all be decommissioned with a new trailhead road, as well as all the staging areas and the road to staging area 3. Okay, so for this specific project, so as you might remember, last year we conducted a groundwater study, and the groundwater study found that the floodplain groundwater on the east side of Kachess Valley is recharged after the dry season via surface water infiltration from the main stem channel and tributaries, and confirmed that surface water inputs are a driving mechanism in floodplain groundwater recharge after the dry season. The perennial tributary contributions of Magic Creek and Cedar Creek and other hill slope seeps are responsible for the higher groundwater elevations in the downstream section of the study area. Although these channels do not remain connected perennially to the main stem channel, they do contribute surface water from the hill slope that infiltrates into the floodplain substrate. So, the key findings of the groundwater study that pertain to Phase 1 include that the existing conditions will not support the creation of groundwater-fed tributaries, that the project can support groundwater recharge through floodplain and tributary connectivity. Reconnecting Magic Creek to Cold Creek will benefit the floodplain connectivity, recharge, and supplement Cold Creek and lower flows. And improving Cedar Creek's connection to the Kachess main stem will provide off-channel refugia, habitat, and nutrients from the floodplain. So going off of that, the findings from this study inform changes to our designs that facilitate the movement of water out into the floodplain to create greater floodplain connectivity and recharge. For Phase 1, we reconnect Magic Creek to Cold Creek. Cold Creek feeds an important perennial pool in Kachess River where rearing bull trout subsist until the river rewaters in the fall. Reconnection will supplement Cold Creek at lower flows and provide better floodplain connectivity. The area of reconnection is highlighted in red. So this is the 5% daily exceedance flow, and then the 1.5 year flood event, 2 year, and 10 year. Okay. In addition, the mid-channel jams, roughness bars, and bank barrier jams will confine the channel and encourage a single thread channel that maintains a greater width-depth ratio later in the season. The structures will sustain suitable velocities to maintain bed scour. And I just want to note that this modeling was conducted prior to the designs that you have right now. So they don't accurately portray the filling that we're going to do on the Gully Road, so that the floodplain looks a little bit different here. But the main focus is the channel itself. So once again, that was the 5% exceedance in the 1.5 year, 2 year, 10 year. Okay. So feedback from the 2020 Surfboard Grant Round, the groundwater study, and evolution of the channel have informed changes to our designs. So we removed proposed structures in the lower portion of Reach 2 based on the surfboard feedback and natural processes. Old growth trees fell in locations approximate to the proposed structures and are providing the ecosystem benefits those structures were going to contribute. Furthermore, the groundwater study results demonstrated there was not enough water to support a gallery channel, so it was removed from the design set. And also of note, the location of some of the structures have adjusted just a little bit using the updated flow modeling data that we have. Okay. And then further survey work and modeling also demonstrated that reconnecting the perennial Magic Creek to Coal Creek will provide greater floodplain connectivity. So that was added. That was not something that was on here in the previous year. So the in-stream structures will provide multiple functions, including promoting large void retention, pool and bar development in very flow direction, increasing proximity of groundwater-fed pools, encouraging channel narrowing and flow complexity, enhancing habitat quality, providing high flow refugia in the active channel, promoting increased activation of the existing floodplain and increased floodplain connectivity, and encouraging riparian vegetation establishment. So in this first section, I'm going to kind of show you an aerial view. This is the view of the bottom 4 structures. These 3 mid-channel jams will tighten up the channel. The hydraulic modeling shows that the channel flow will no longer be straight, adding complexity. These jams will provide seasonal habitat and geomorphic complexity to collect and add to function. The mid-channel jams with roughness bars will confine water into a small area. While we can increase the quantity of water, these structures will increase the proximity of the holding poles to each other and extend the duration the stream stays above the surface. These jams will also push water out into the floodplain into the old growth forests. The scour hole located at the top right jam will promote removing the sediment plug that is keeping Cedar Creek from accessing the channel during higher flows. And that's right in here. So there's like a sediment plug that's set up right here. Okay, and then higher up. In this upper portion of Reach 2, we will construct 2 mid-channel jams with roughness and a banked berry jam. The uppermost mid-channel jam will enhance the perennial pool fed by Coal Creek. The truck icon indicates where the access road will come out into the river, so it'll be coming out somewhere in there. The proposed scours, shown in blue, are the excavation extents for the project. As mentioned before, modeling work shows that the velocities will maintain scour pools and maximize the water in those pools during periods of dewatering. Modeling indicates that the scour will likely excavate more bed load in the pools over time. Magic Creek reconnection and work in the later phases will move water out into the floodplain and recharge the groundwater table, which will help maintain flow. And this is the typical for the mid-channel jam and bar roughness treatment area. The bar roughness areas will vary in length depending on their location. And then this is the mid-channel jam and berry jam typicals. Okay, so for the floodplain reconnection, this portion of the project will be completed using a tracked excavator, which will only enter and exit the site one time. The excavator will remove approximately 155 cubic yards of fill and disperse it at the site. So here's a closer look at what's being proposed. The berm, which is right here, will be excavated, connecting Magic Creek to Coal Creek during lower flows. And then in these areas, there will be a little bit of shaping and reworking so that the flow is pushed towards Coal Creek, but in high flows will continue down into the forested area, into the old growth forest. And so here's another kind of look at the cut and fill being proposed. So this picture kind of shows you the site whereabouts where we'll be working. And this site is in an alder stand, indicative of the previous logging disturbances. It is in the process of healing, and this proposed action will minimize disturbance by using a mini rubber tracked excavator. And this is the vegetation plan. To summarize, what we changed from the last 2 years, from last year's application, is that we removed the structures in the lower part of Reach 2, we removed the groundwater fed tributaries, and we added the floodplain reconnection element in the eastern floodplain. And as requested by Sean, so some questions and concerns from last year. There was concern that the in-stream structures will split flows and reduce scour. As designed, the mid-channel jams will help push water out into the floodplain during flood events, but will confine flow to a single channel during lower flows. These structures will promote flows to create and maintain critical habitat features like pools would cover. And there's also concern that the groundwater fed tributaries couldn't be supported and that they would further contribute to dewatering. And based off the findings from the groundwater study that we did, those were removed from the plans. So the data from the study indicated that there is not sufficient groundwater to support the creation of a perennial groundwater fed tributary, so it was removed. The study found that reconnecting Magic Creek to Cold Creek will benefit floodplain connectivity, recharge, and supplement Cold Creek and lower flows. In addition, improving the outlet of Cedar Creek on Kachess River can improve refugia, habitat, and floodplain nutrients. So we also had a question about the recreation of the site and about decommissioning the road. So I just wanted to dive in and make sure that we address that. Forest Service Road 4600 is considered a maintenance level 1 road and has a gravel bed. The portion of the road coming out of the trailhead is currently impassable due to Watermelon Creek and vegetation. The gravel road bed is still mostly intact. All roads in the floodplain will be decommissioned and the trailhead will be relocated following the restoration portion of the project. Recreational use of this site is relatively low. The Mineral Creek Trail is a hiker-only trail that provides access to the Pacific Crest Trail. The trail is difficult and it isn't regularly maintained, and so only your really rough and tumble backpackers use that trail. The trail also connects to the Little Kachess Trail down towards the Kachess campground, but that bridge that goes over Box Canyon or Box Creek has been blown out now for some time, and so it's really only accessible during the later months, and it's also not a highly used trail. Okay, that's what I have. What questions or what answers can I try to provide?
Melissa, this is Pat Monk. Have there been any fish surveys done in those perennial streams that you were referring to? Do we know if there's any non-fish populations?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pat. I don't believe any fish surveys have been done. The time that we've spent back there, I think it was really this past summer when we realized, especially the extent of Magic Creek. Here, let me scroll back up so I can show this to you. I don't think anybody had realized that Magic Creek, sorry, it's gonna take a second. My presentation. Okay. So essentially, like Magic Creek, I guess it comes down out of here actually. Magic Creek comes down out of here, and then comes back and hugs this, and it runs to about here when it's really, really, really low, at the lowest part of the summer. But we didn't realize the extent of that. I mean, I've been back there with like Scott Klein and some of the other biologists, but we haven't done an official survey. But we would definitely do that prior to make sure that we're not disturbing fish habitat.
Yes, also if it's like a beaver pond complex or something, those can be very good brook trout habitat.
Yeah, there is evidence that at one time there were beaver, especially like right here at the mouth, kind of near Cold Creek. There's evidence of like an old dam, but it's been a really, really long time. And at the end of this project, our hope is that we could actually reintroduce beaver to this area because there's a lot of food. But I don't think in this whole system, Pat, that they found any brook trout. At least from like the fish rescues and stuff like that. I don't believe that we found any, but that's a good point, and that's something that we would absolutely consider.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See, Danielle, was just commenting on what a great presentation was, and I'd have to agree. Is there any other questions that people have? Well, with that, Melissa, thank you very much. And I think we can, if Margaret's here, which I believe she is, we could probably
I'm seeing
move
a
on.
I'm sorry.
Yep, looks like there's one more question after all.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Melissa. Thanks. It was a great presentation. I just a quick question on the drawings show, I think, like some 6-foot deep excavated pools and associated with some of the large wood structures in the main channel. And I was just wondering, is the expected maintenance of those pools associated with like the constricted flow and the velocities through there, and how close is that to the groundwater table?
Okay, so that's a great question. The velocities, the way that this was designed is that the velocities should continue that the bed scour, so that we're continuing to move sediment through the system, which was an important component of it. Let me get to where you're talking about here. Sorry, there are so many slides. Okay. So you're asking about these pools here, Patrick?
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the complexities of Kachess, it is likely that we're not trying to excavate these down to be connected year round. What we found, let's see, when I think we dug down to do our groundwater study, we dug approximately, I think it was near this pool, like what would be an equivalent. And at the height of dewatering, it was, we didn't hit water at that time of year. So for right now, we need these structures there in order to facilitate like those natural processes and ensure that we have the hydraulics all the way through to get the sediment through the system. But it's likely that like at least these lower pools, our engineers think that it's possible that these may stay watered or this one definitely will. These may stay watered, but that these lower ones likely will not stay watered year round. But in the interim, they will provide better habitat. So like when a fish rescue does continue to happen, then it'll provide water for longer in those pools, and it'll be better habitat in the interim. Does that answer your question, Patrick?
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions that have occurred to people in the meantime? Danielle, I saw what you said about Kachess River being a very difficult project with uncertainties. I was just curious about what your perspective on that is.
Well, sure. So how do we put it? I'm looking at it from a hydrogeology perspective, in the fact that it is a really conductive system, and you see that from the piezometer hydrographs that KCT has put together. Like, you see a really fast response curve when water is moving into the system, and it infiltrates into the groundwater very quickly. But unfortunately, the converse side of that is it also tends to leave the system very quickly. And so I think that, what I'm seeing in the design evolution is that KCT is acknowledging that complexity, and they're trying their best to address the problems that are seen in the best way. And, you know, there's still probably going to be dewatering in some of the reaches, specifically the lower one that's directly adjacent to the reservoir. And I think you guys know that, we've talked about that. But, you know, the excavation of the deeper pools gives the biologists that are out there doing bull trout rescue some additional time to get in there and do those operations while the whole system is restoring itself. So, Melissa, did I?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Danielle. That hit it on the head.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything for Melissa? Give it a minute or two more just in case anything occurs to anybody.
Oh, Melissa, this is Pat again. Just quickly, the sheet that you're showing now with the profile, I don't think that's in the plan set. Is there a new plan set coming? Like, is this new information? I notice it says working draft here.
Yeah, I thought I will double check that for you, Patrick.
Okay.
I thought that we had put up the latest working draft design. So these are essentially like the 95% designs, but then there's been even more tweaking. So this is the most updated one that we have, and I'll double check on Surfboard to make sure those are on there.
Yeah, the plans that are in Prism, they have a lot of information about the groundwater channel. That's the profile of groundwater channel that's kind of not part of the project anymore. So it's, yeah, that too, I guess.
Okay. We'll make sure that those are in there for and available.
Okay.
One last chance before we move on for any other questions. Well, thank you very much, Melissa. Really appreciate you coming back and filling us in on more of this. And I also enjoyed the pictures.
Yay, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.